Hi, everyone. I am Merril Hoge, and you're watching Gameday. Now, here's what's going to be different about this particular show. I'm going to share stuff with you based on experience or study and tape. Those are the two things that I'm going to bring you information on. If I didn't study it, I'm not going to share it with you. So to start this one out, because we had no preseason, I actually wanted to kind of take some games and look at some of I think going to be some of the issues with matchups with teams that didn't have preseason. And before I get to that, here's what I'm telling you about the value. Okay, if you had a new coach, you have new learning, you have new players, especially as a quarterback, and you didn't get to evaluate and work on things in the preseason, it's going to play a role in this first matchup. I mean, it always plays a role, but when you have no chance to work on philosophy, learning your players, studying the team as a whole before you play for real, I mean, it's going to be a problem. On Thursday night, actually, we saw a little bit of it with the Texans. You know, they're searching for perimeter players, wide receivers. You could tell that they were out of rhythm and out of sync, and they're searching. Kansas City, aside from their running back, who was a rookie, the core of that team already had played in the system for years. You could tell it. They were in rhythm. They were in sync. So one of the things I want to share with you from a personal experience and why I know it is such a difference maker and there's value in it. I remember my 5th year with Chuck Noll. We'd been playing in the same really offensive system. Actually, Tom Moore was my offensive coordinator when I first got into the National Football League, who is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After our 3rd or 4th year, I'll be honest with you, like 3rd preseason game or after the 2nd preseason game, I mean, we were ready to go. I mean, that's why when you hear complaints about preseason, it's too long. Usually you only hear that out of teams that have been around and have the same system, have the same coach, have played in the same environment over and over. It becomes mundane. It's only the new people that really need it. But, you know, some of those teams are so established, there's not a lot of transition there or a lot of changeover, should I say. Then Chuck Noll retires. Bill Cowher comes in. Ron Erhardt comes in, our offensive coordinator, who was with the Giants when they won the Super Bowl with Bill Parcells. And I can tell you this, we were absolutely horrendous for 4 weeks in preseason. I don't remember scoring many points, if we scored any. And I remember we were very much disarray. We were disheveled, if you will. But this is when I understood real value of preseason. What the coaches were doing at that time is they were really looking at their philosophy of offense, and they tried to do a variety of things throughout the preseason to see what we did well. Well, when it came down to getting ready for the season opener, they had all of this information, things we did good, things we were okay with, and things we were not very good at. And I remember Ron Erhardt, he came in before our first game against the Houston Oilers. We're going to play there. They're supposed to win the AFC. They were a Super Bowl favorite at that time. And he said, listen, we're going to have 4 staple plays. These 4 plays we can run no matter what's happening in the game, what they are playing. This is going to get us back on base. This will get us back on track. There's 3 runs and a pass. And when he whittled those things down and he gave us those 3 plays that were runs and 1 pass, man, it just made a lot of sense to us. Then when I looked at the game plan, I remember it being so confined based on what we had been doing. What I'm getting at is we go to Houston, we end up beating Houston. We have the best record, I know clearly we had the best record in the AFC because we had the first round bye. We might have had the best record in football that year. And that was really a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach. Now, why I'm sharing that with you, nobody gets that has new learning. So when we look at the matchups, I'm going to run through them real quick, but then I'm going to kind of go through each one of them in slight detail to share some information and why I think every team that has new learning, whether it's a new head coach, a new philosophy, a new quarterback, I just think they're going to have the disadvantage in week 1. So if you look at the first real matchup, you got Cleveland, Baltimore, Washington at the Eagles, Cincinnati and the Chargers, Tampa Bay and New Orleans, Giants, Pittsburgh, Indy, Jacksonville, Miami, New England, Carolina and the Raiders, and Dallas and the Rams. Okay, let's go to Cleveland right off the bat. Now you got Baker Mayfield going in his 3rd year. You have a new coach, Kevin Stefanski, who's an offensive coordinator. And all the information out of there is this is a good fit. And I'm not going to disagree with that. I don't know if it's a good fit. I haven't been able to study anything on tape, so I can't tell you if it's a good fit. However, they're entering this game into the Baltimore Ravens, who they actually split with last year and played well against. I think, in fact, they beat them in Baltimore. But they have all new learning, and you have a young quarterback. Sometimes I think that's an advantage to have this early change versus later, is because he hasn't been so established in something that it's a hard learn for him. But at the end of the day, it's new learning. I can just tell you this: they as a staff are going to be confident. They're going to say, hey, we believe here's what we're good at. Deep down, they don't know. They just can't know. They've not played against anybody. It's what you're going to say, but it's really not what they're going to. And you'll see it in the game. I don't think there's any question that you're going to clearly see it in the game. And just a little sidebar in this one, although it's not really, I think, going to be a factor in this game, because like I said, I'm always going to go with a team that's much more solidified in their philosophies and their personnel, and there's no learning there. Baltimore doesn't have that. Although they have a quarterback situation there that he was so dynamic with his legs. This year is going to be a transition year for him, in that all of the things he did in his legs about last year, about 1/3 of that is going to have to be converted to his arm this year for the Ravens to be a better team. If they think they're going to do just what they did last year, I think the Ravens could struggle from that perspective. If Lamar Jackson can't evolve as a passer, it could really be an uphill battle for them this year. And 1/3 what he did on the ground is going to have to translate to his arm. And I'm going to be watching that closely, and we'll evaluate that as the year goes on. Washington, Philadelphia. Really, Philadelphia doesn't have a ton of new learning. Washington is completely new. Ron Rivera is the head coach. He comes in there. Dwayne Haskins, even though he's in his second year, and I went back, going back to what I believe as far as quarterback, if you're not, say, your eighth year and you got to start new learning, I think it's a lot more difficult. Your second year, not as hard for Dwayne Haskins. However, now, technically, he's a little bit of a rookie again. And you have all this new learning, and that's a daunting task with no preseason. I'm going to keep coming back to that. No way to evaluate your team, see what they do well. So you kind of work on that through practice, and that's very difficult because you don't get to see a variety of defenses and different looks and different circumstances that exist in preseason that help you be the evaluator and formulate a game plan that works best for your team. They don't have that luxury. And I think you're going to see that effect in this game. And it'll be hard for Washington to beat Philadelphia. When you think of Cincinnati and the Chargers, I think this really just comes down to Joe Burrow's going to be your starter. Zach Taylor, who is your second year as a head coach. Advantage, they're all young, and it's a good time to have this change. And going forward, I think there's a bright future here. However, there's a lot of new learning. There's, you got Joe Burrow, who's a young guy who I think is as gifted a player as I've ever studied coming out of college, from a decision aspect and an accuracy aspect, and really a leadership aspect. A national championship game, I think the thing that stood out to me the most, and it wasn't his terrific throws, it wasn't his dynamic plays, it was how they rattled him early, and it never rattled him. He was able to work through that, and that's what happens in the NFL every Sunday. You run into those environments. You didn't see this coming. They're doing this to us. How to adjust to that? And that, to me, really spoke volumes to him. So I'm excited. However, it's just a ton of new learning. It's just, and no experience. So, it's a daunting task for Cincinnati against the LA Chargers. Moving on, I think the biggest game of all of these that have new learning is the Tampa Bay New Orleans game. Okay, well, this to me is like, an awesome matchup until you start thinking about really all the new learning. Now, let me talk about the brain trust that exists in Tampa. I know them all really well. Okay, Bruce Arians is a good friend of mine. He's been offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh for years. I mentioned Tom Moore earlier, who was my offensive coordinator when I first came in the league. One of the greatest minds in the National Football League. If you don't know his name, that's okay. If you talk to people in the NFL, they would bow down, because that is like, he is royalty in the NFL. He is that good. He built Peyton Manning's career. He was his OC almost his entire career. And he is just a brilliant mind. You got Leftwich, who's the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach there, who's a really talented coach. And then you have, obviously, Tom Brady. And, I would hear that, could Tom Brady play in Bruce Arians' offense? I'm like, my first thought is, who in your right mind think that you're going to bring in Tom Brady and you're Bruce Arians and you go, hey, Tom, this is what we do on our offense. This is how we run things. First thing Bruce Arians says, hey, what do you do well? What do you like? Here's what we do. How can we work this? It's been, and I know this for a fact, it's been a collaborating effort to find out all of the things that we all want to do well, we can do well, and we're going to build from there. I'm disappointed they didn't get preseason because I do believe in this game, that's ultimately the difference. As great as Tom Brady is, the one guy he is familiar with is going to be Gronkowski, and that is a huge plus. So I don't see as big of hurdles for Tampa Bay in this first one because he has that, but everything else is new for him. All the perimeter stuff is new for him. Offensive line, they're new. Coaches are new. And to not have that preseason plays a role in this game. Giants, the Monday night game, Pittsburgh, it's very, Ben's going to be back. That's great for football. I'm just going to tell you this, whether you're a Steelers fan or not, and because I played for the Steelers, people think I'll harp on that. I've been neutral as far as an evaluator for years. Here's what is always true. You like great players. Okay, when this league loses great players, when Peyton Manning left, listen, I don't care what you thought about Peyton Manning, that hurts. When you lose people like that, great players, that hurts. So to have him back is great for not just the Steelers, it's great for football. Joe Judge, the head coach there, there's a lot of energy there. You love that aspect of it, but there's new learning. Daniel Jones, he's a young quarterback. So this change isn't as hard on him because really didn't get established in anything anyway that he was like, man, I really like that. So I don't think that hurts him. At the end of the day, it's still new learning. He has some growth that he has. I don't think you see this year that you would have seen had he stayed in the same system. And all of that new learning, again, plays a role in this game. I think, especially these first ones, I pivot everything on this new learning, new positions. And the one I really harp on the most is if there's a new quarterback on your team, which leads me to the next matchup, Indy and Jacksonville. When I look at this whole thing, I think Indy could be an awesome football team. I think there are phases across that team that are awesome. And that might be good enough to beat Jacksonville. This one, it may not factor as much as the others I've mentioned and will mention, but still Phillip Rivers is new. He's new to every aspect of the offense, to his teammates, and I can just tell you from going from Pittsburgh to Chicago, I think half of our huddle was new when we walked in there. And I remember all of us were kind of joking, all of us played a long time. We almost, as a collective group, on average, almost 8 to 10 years. And we were all like, man, this is brand new. We're standing in Soldier Field, this Bears uniform on, we're like, this is new, even though, we've been in the league a long time. And I've never forgot that. There's so much truth to that. And it usually takes you to your second year till you really get comfortable. So with no preseason, again, I'm going to go back to that. I think it could play a role. But I think the Colts in this one are just an overall better football team, so they might be able to carry this one through over Jacksonville. Then we go to Miami, New England. Shoot, New England. Everything is focused on Cam Newton, new quarterback, Tom Brady gone. But let's not miss, half their defense or a third of it, opted out. Leaders on that team, the quarterbacks of that defense. And as good as Bill Belichick is, and if you studied him like I have, or his history a little bit, it's often said about it, and there's some truth to it, is he understands when you got to play great football. That's in December. You won't see what they're really all about until December. But that doesn't mean you can go 0-8 because December's irrelevant. So they're going to have to win. And this divisional opponents, coaching staffs, they know each other. But I just think all of the players they've lost and the new quarterback and all the things that going back to no preseason, still uncertainty, probably plays a bigger role in this one. Miami, and Miami's always played New England well. Divisional opponents will do that to one another. But the preseason affects this game. This might be a chance for Miami to start out 1-0 and have some good energy. Then we look at Carolina and Raiders. The Carolina Panthers. You got Matt Rhule, and everybody's new. Quarterback, Bridgewater, new. That's a lot. And I go back to the things they didn't have the advantage to do. Look at their players, evaluate what they did well, throw the entire offense out there, and then whittle it down to here's what we do well. They don't have that luxury. They've had to do that through practice with not all these variety of situations that do exist. So I think that one plays a big role. The Raiders now evolving with Gruden and having philosophies in place, young players that are working out for them. And the Raiders, I think, are more poised and in a better position to really win this game because they don't have all this new learning and all this change, and especially at the quarterback position. The Dallas Cowboys, even it's a late night game against the Rams. Rams, pretty consistent. Philosophy's pretty consistent. Major players pretty consistent. Now, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy and Kelvin Moore stays over. And so some people think, well, they're going to probably just keep the exact same thing. Which, listen, good coaches do that. They're like, hey, listen, I don't want to disrupt stuff, but Mike McCarthy has a great mind. And there's always egos involved. And listen, I don't think Mike McCarthy is an arrogant person in the sense he's like, I don't care what you did well, we're going to do B, which is bad coaching. Mike McCarthy is a very good coach, but he's going to want to put new things in and things that he believes are going to help his football team and help Dak Prescott. It's all new learning. So there's going to be, there's some consistency there. It's not as much a change, but there's still going to be adds and changes that matter. And, that to me, that makes a factor in this game because all that new defensively, you're going to be, new people around there. And that takes time. Seattle and Atlanta. I'm going to tell you something personally that I heard from Mike Mularkey, who was the tight end coach there last year, good friend of mine. And remember, they went 1-6. And then I think after that, when they went to 1-6, obviously he was being fired. Everybody was predicting he was going to get fired. He didn't. I remember Mike Mularkey saying, I'm just going to tell you this. And Mike Mularkey was a head coach twice in the National Football League, in Buffalo and Nashville and Tennessee. And he's like, I don't think I could have done what Dan Quinn did. He goes, how he held us together as a team was incredible. Now, why does that matter going into this matchup? Well, when you see how they finished, these are the things that can carry on into the next year. I've experienced it myself in Pittsburgh. We had one of our worst years ever, but our head coach, Chuck Noll, kept us together. And there ends up being a belief because he believed in us, we believe in him. And I'm just kidding, that chemistry and that bond is serious when it's developed. And I think that was developed in Atlanta. I don't think that Seattle walks in there and blows their doors off. Atlanta, I think, has a good chance to win this game. A little bit of the preseason, but Seattle having to travel from the West Coast, that's a hard thing to start at 1 o'clock for that team. And there's a whole other bunch of issues there, but that inside of that nucleus of that team, I think, is important for that matchup. Let's go to the Green Bay Vikings game. This one might be the only one that simulates like week 8, because they're two divisional opponents. Cousins in his 3rd year, Rodgers obviously in his 100th year, and Rodgers is Rodgers. But here's the difference I really think in this game. And if I don't bring a factor back up, well, this just ain't my kind of show. But it's going to come down to a factor back. And I'm just going to tell you this, it could be Dalvin Cook. And the reason I feel strongly about that, he's now in his 2nd year of his knee injury. And I should just tell you from a confidence aspect, when you've been hurt, developing that confidence back and getting your rhythm back, it can take you a full year. Forget the contract he just signed. That's not why I'm leaning on him. I'm just telling you the way usually injuries like that go and kind of player is, he might be the difference in it. Arizona, San Francisco. Okay, another divisional game. Last year these two teams played each other very tight. And now Arizona, keep in mind, I know they had all new learning last year, and with what they're trying to do, getting a guy like Hopkins over there, I think there's a bunch of notoriety on it. I think people are well aware that how well he has played with inconsistency at quarterback. I just think that speaks volumes to what he does inside the white lines of the football field, because that's all I care about. And you got a young quarterback there that I think helps him. It might help them do what they want to do philosophy-wise too, because they're more of a wide-open offense. They want to throw it more. Having to run it and having that balance in the NFL, he's going to have to eventually learn, because that is a factor. People call it a passing league. You go look at who wins Super Bowls. They have a running game, and they have to have that phase. In the NFL, you can't win with just one phase. But Hopkins gives you another phase to their passing attack. Hopkins makes them, and especially Murray, makes him a much better looking quarterback in his 2nd year. And that's when you usually see the best of a player. I'm going to just tell you this. When I went to my 2nd year, holy cow, it was nothing like my rookie year. There's a certain confidence, especially when you've been in the same system. And that's when you really get to show the type of player you are usually in your 2nd year. So I think Murray will be a lot better because of that and the addition of Hopkins. Jets and Buffalo. Now this actually could be an intriguing matchup from this. Buffalo's supposed to move on. They're going to dominate the division. Now it's them, not New England. And, Josh Allen, I struggled with him at Wyoming when he came out. Based on, he had a big arm, but he was very inconsistent with all his throws to that. Now, he's a special kid, though. I love the kid, and he's willing to work. And at least if you have that, you have a chance. And sparks of that showed up last year. He's another guy. Look at Lamar Jackson running the ball so much. I mean, Josh Allen eventually has to do that too. Transition what I did with my legs to my arm eventually, or you just won't survive in the NFL long enough. So you're going to have to see that a little bit of that transition with Josh Allen, and be consistent in those throws that matter. And those are oftentimes down the field. Having Diggs there, we're going to see that. We'll be able to see if he's consistent with that. And I think if he is, like I said, we're going to always give you an evaluation from my experience or watching tape. It's not by watching a game or watching a highlight reel. TV lies and highlights really lie. But tape will tell you the truth, and that's why I'm going to always give you stuff that comes from watching the tape or on my screen right there. I'm not just going to watch a game and then pretend like I know. If I do, I'll tell you that. I'll announce that. I only watched it on TV. I haven't watched it on tape, so I always put that a part of my evaluation process. So I'll be honest with you and help you and give you details that hopefully, I know you won't be able to see because you don't get the tape. So we'll share that insight with you. Before we close this out, the Jets part of this, Adam Gase there in his second year. You've got Le'Veon Bell coming into his second year. And this is often very true. Donald, too, in his second year with this system. I mentioned as a rookie, your second year, you're better. Well, as a free agent, too, it's all new learning. I don't care how long you played in the NFL. I remember we went to the Chicago Bears. Half our huddle was new. But on our first game, we were all going, man, this feels like our rookie year. And because we were unfamiliar. Nobody ever had a Bears uniform on before. You haven't been sitting in Soldier Field, and it was new. And just because you played in the NFL doesn't mean you just pick up where you left off. You have an experience, but you got a new learning from a philosophy and a teammate perspective and a coaching perspective. So those things should be behind them. Jets could be an interesting team this year. I give a slight edge to the Buffalo Bills because of their overall philosophy, consistency, and the players that exist there. But I think we've seen an improved Jet team, and I know that'll make a lot of Jet fans happy out there. And there's a lot of Jet fans out there going, don't say that, because that's what we always expect, and then it's disastrous. So I don't think that's going to happen this year. In fact, that might help the Jets. We didn't have preseason because all the teams that didn't get preseason, so it might help the Jets. Really, the last matchup we want to talk about is the late Monday night game, Denver and Tennessee. I'm just going to put this all on one player, Von Miller. When you do not have a Von Miller in a game, let's go with what's happening in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans. They cannot be more excited. Why? They don't have to worry or game plan for a game record. I can't even tell you, okay, let's use a play caller, for example. The burden is off of him, a massive burden. All the things that they probably were geared to do as far as like a back staying in, all this protection, all of these things that you had to do in the game to take care of 58. Okay, it was no different when we played 56 in New York, okay? Lawrence Taylor. I remember my rookie year, I come out for practice, we're playing the Giants, and I see two people with 56 jerseys on. I'm like, that's blue. I'm like, black and gold. I'm like, oh, it's not dawning on me why they got 56 until we get to practice. And the emphasis of 56 was our entire practice, getting people on him, blocking him. And we had a whole game plan about how we handled him in passing day, when we got down closer to the goal line versus out in the field. I mean, it's just this enormous game plan around 56 because 56 could ruin a game. It's a huge burden lifted for the Tennessee Titans, And now Denver, from a player perspective, I'm just telling you this, when you lose a good player like that, that's devastating. That is very hard. I mean, you have to compensate for that or overcome that the best you can. You can't compensate as a team for not having Von Miller. You just have to understand you're not going to have him. And you have to do some different things, but you're never going to be as dynamic as you can be if Von Miller's in your lineup. You can say that, but the facts are it cannot happen and it will not happen. So that's a big difference in this particular matchup. And it's the one that actually could, really shift who wins this game, is not having Von Miller on the field. That does it for here. Take that information, apply it any way you want. And we appreciate you guys watching Game Day. And we always going to say this at the end of Game Day shows. Are you in?